those photos that you see on Pinterest and Instagram, it's not real life. And I know that very intimately because I create a lot of those images.
Me and my daughter love going to Target and seeing your picture.
It's a filter and it's fun, right? It's an art.
Yes.
You don't want to live in a picture. That's not what's going to make your life beautiful. It's really about transporting, where do I want to be? Where do I want to feel like I am in this moment?
Welcome, Justina, to Home Therapy with Anita Yokota. I am in awe that we get this wonderful time together. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
You encourage me daily. Your energy, your spirit. I'm not just saying this. It is something that emulates, like it just not emulate, it emanates through the screen, through your amazing work. And then I saw you in an art gallery. Like every time I see your newest creative endeavor, like even with the Ruggables, it makes my brain chemistry just explode.
Oh, I love to hear that. Thank you so much, Anita.
You're welcome. I'm just going to dive right into my first question because it is a very pertinent one. As you know, I'm a therapist for 20 years and now an interior designer. You actually have a psychological influence yourself because both your parents have psychology backgrounds. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, both of my parents are developmental psychologists.
That's just so incredible to me. It fascinates me. My first thought when I was preparing my time with you is, I'm wondering, how did they influence your creative spirit? For me, when I, again, think of you, when I am with you, there's just this creativity explosion. Was this something that you feel like because of their psychology backgrounds, they were able to encourage you more? Or in hindsight, did you see an intersection with that?
I think it's always so difficult to pinpoint exactly sort of why one is the way one is and all the different ingredients that went into sort of, why I'm creative or why I feel allowed to follow my creativity and all of that. And I think that my parents, being psychologists, probably did influence my way of being. When I think about it and try and pinpoint it, one of the things that I go to is the way that my mother in particular always made me aware of the emotionality of things and emotion body connection. So I felt like she was very, very early on the kind of somatic influence train, which I feel like is now sort of gaining popularity. But when I was a little girl, I had a headache and I would be like, Mom, I have a headache. And, she would say, is there something on your mind? I had asthma growing up. And so if I was having asthma, she would say, like, is there something you need to get off your chest? Sometimes it was a little bit annoying as a kid too, right? I was like, no, just give me some Advil, or I hurt my back. Well, is there something that you're carrying that you need to offload? Sort of just planting those seeds about everything is connected, right? And I think very much in our culture here in the US, we like to bifurcate like mind, body, spirit, emotions, like it's all disconnected. Like, oh, I hurt my foot. That doesn't have any other meaning besides that, my foot hurts. But I grew up sort of entrenched in this idea that no, it's very much connected. And so that I think has influenced my personality a lot and my work a lot because it has always made sense to me that how you feel and what your spirit sort of says to you and how your spirit talks to you is influenced by everything that you are and everything that's around you, right? And thinking about that very comprehensively and thoroughly, not just through a single lens. So I think that's one way that I think I was very much influenced by psychology growing up. And I also think that both of my parents one of their areas of interest and study is morality. I grew up with a lot of just rhetoric about the moral atmosphere in different
Mhm.
places. As a 6-year old, you hear people constantly talking about the moral atmosphere of a place. That definitely influenced um, my way of thinking about space.
I am really fascinated to hear that early training because every day is so busy. We go into that autopilot mode. And for you, it was to me such a blessing to be more aware of your surroundings and that mind body connection. It all starts with awareness. So for your mom to teach you that emotional muscle of self awareness, environment awareness, that makes sense why your creativity and your strong sense of self exudes in your work today. Because as we get creative, it really has to come from an authentic and vulnerable place.
Mhm.
And I can imagine being vulnerable and being authentic was something that was important in your household.
I don't think it was necessarily framed that way. My parents ran a school for young women who had often been neglected or abused by their families of origin. It was a residential treatment center, so the girls lived there. And I really grew up there. I would go there
Mm.
every day after school, the way someone might kind of grow up in a grocery store or something if their
Yeah.
parents,
My
owned a
family
grocery
owned
store.
it is a little bit stereotypical, but my family owned a Chinese restaurant, my grandma and my uncles. And so every day after school, we'd go to the Chinese restaurant, so,
Yeah,
so we all
exactly.
have that experience.
So this residential treatment center was my Chinese restaurant. And, I went there and had dinners with the girls, every day, not every day, but I grew up there. And so there was also a great sense of, well, first of all, it's just sort of gratitude, right? Like I grew up in very, very close proximity to a lot of young girls and young women who really, really had a tough lot. Just from a very young age, I think I was very, very aware of how fortunate I was. And that also kind of colored the lens through which I see the world, because it was like both of my parents like owned and operated this school that helped, dozens and dozens of girls and young women. And like I was their child. You know what I mean? So I really felt like I like hit the lottery. My brother and sister too, obviously, but just growing up in that environment, it just made me aware of how lucky I was.
It's definitely a contrast to see what emotionally we have compared to some others in that environment. So I just really appreciate your background because when I see your artwork or your things at Target, me and my daughter love going to Target and seeing your picture. And you've met my middle daughter. You were so gracious to she interviewed you for a history project. We're always like, "There's Justina." We're so excited to see you in all your different endeavors. But what I truly appreciate is, again, there's this humility and authenticity um, from where you start at, and I just really, really feel it. I feel that energy. So, kind of shifting from your parents' influence, we both have daughters. And I'm just curious, how is that now with having a daughter? Do you take what you've learned from your parents into your parenting, or is it kind of a mix? Have you developed your own style? How do you honor creativity in developing her spirit?
One of the things that was a gift growing up as well was just being provided with the time and the space to explore my creativity without a lot of rules or directives or um, judgments about what was being made. And that's something that I really try and do for Ida as well. I like to provide Ida with as many tools, as much time, um, and just the freedom to create without limitations on that and without judgment. And that's something that when you're a designer or a creative or an artist, I'm constantly judging my own work. And so really trying, like making a very, very strong effort not to do that. Just allowing Ida to really explore that without me being watching, or, it's like we're
It's
kind of
easy.
creatives together, and we
Mhm.
make stuff together all the time, but there's like not a lot of judgment, not a lot of like pushing, it's just about, I think, giving space, allowing space. And I feel like that's, from my perspective, the best thing you can do, is to sort of be there in case of questions, or asking for help or any of those kinds of things, but to really let it come from Ida, and not have it sort of be me imposing that onto Ida.
And I really feel that from you. I might tear up a little bit, but from you, I just feel like you're so generous in spirit, even to someone like me who's been a fangirl for so long. And sorry, I don't know why I'm tearing up, but you've been such a
Don't.
positive influence. And I would love to know if we can translate that, because I know there's a lot of listeners who want to feel more confident at home. How would you guide us who do judge ourselves a lot? I'll be transparent. I am very critical of myself. And like we started the podcast just now, and I'm like, no, I'm going to own it. This isn't just a little small project. I love this. This is like huge for me. But that takes a lot for me to switch
Mhm,
gears, because
mhm,
I tend to fall into negative thoughts fairly quickly about
mhm,
myself. So for you, I've always felt that you've had this confidence, and I know it's a journey. No one's born 100%, Teflon. But how would you advise people, listeners like me, who still want to gain confidence at home through design? How do we translate that creativity into using design to feel confident? Because, that's all about what I do is home therapy. So,
mhm.
what is your take of home therapy? How do we gain our confidence at home?
I think I gain confidence by doing, and by seeing my incremental progress. So I think that it sounds like basic. And actually, I think at the heart of it, it is basic. But what it takes, and what I hear from people who spend a lot of time with me, is that I'm a little bit relentless. you know uh, I'm a little bit relentless in my pursuits. What that means is that I'm just constantly trying things. And when you're constantly trying things, you just get better at it. And like, if you're paying attention, you're noticing that you're getting better at it. I mean, for me, I'm sitting here in my office, and I'm looking at this mountain outside of my window, and the first thing that's coming up for me, this isn't necessarily design related in a very specific way, but I think it's a really good metaphor for anything in life that you're working hard on and that you want to feel more confident about. So my husband, about a year and a half ago, went on this hike, and he said, "Go outside the window." I'm standing there, and I looked, and he waved at me, and he was far. He was teeny tiny. I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're way up there. Wow, that's cool." And he's like, "Yeah, this hike is awesome. It's close to the house. It's only about an hour long. Like, you should do it." And so I was like, "Cool, I'll try it." So like the next week, I like got my water bottle, I got my hiking shoes on, I went out, and I like got probably like a half a mile up into the mountain. I was like, I don't know if I'm going the right way. Oh my God, I'm tired. It's hot. I was like, oh, like, and I ended up turning around. I didn't do the whole thing. It's a loop, right? That kind of like loops around and comes back. And I like couldn't do it. And I got scared and spooked and turned around and came back. And then I was like, I'm going to try again though. Cause he was like, "Oh, you were almost there. You just needed to keep going like 10 or 15 more minutes." So I was like, all right, I'm going to try it again. So the next week I went up and I tried it again. And like, when I got back home, I was like parched. It was so hard. It was so much incline. I was like, oh, that was intense. Cut to a year and a half later, I now do that hike almost every day. And
Wow.
and my goal is to be able to jog it. And I'm like, not there yet. Right now I'm at the place where I can jog all the flat or downhill parts. I know I'm going to get there to being able to jog the whole thing. And here's the thing, like, it's been a year and a half, and I've been doing it almost every day, and it's slow, and it's a grind. And every time I get home, I'm like, "Whew, that was hard." and I'm winded. And it's the same thing with creativity and design. It's like, yeah, well, a lot of people think they can just jump in and start doing something and they're automatically going to be awesome at it. And that's not how it works. You have to put the work
No.
in. And like when you work at something every day, and you might not notice the first week, the second week, the third month, but like a year and a half in, you're going to look back and be like, oh, wow, actually, like when I first started this, I didn't think this looked good. Now I'm doing it, and I walk into this room, and these colors are singing, and these patterns work really well together. And like I see it. And like I'm going to take that seed and I'm going to plant it into the next thing I do. And so it's really it's about exercising the muscle. And like if you exercise your muscle every day, whether it's your triceps or your creative muscles, like they're going to get stronger. And as you build that strength and you notice it and you own it, and you, just like you did on this podcast, say, no, you know what? I actually am doing something dope. I actually am getting stronger. I can feel myself getting stronger. That's where you start to get the confidence from. It has to be built on something, on a foundation that's real. And you build that foundation by doing the work every day, you know, and by giving yourself grace if you miss a day. And by saying, I missed today, but I'm going to get back on it tomorrow. And that's okay.
What I'm hearing you also say is not basing every day's grind on a perfectionistic outcome. Because I think what happens is people say designing their own homes, they have this magazine idea in their head of what their living room should look like. So you're already up against something that's so perfect and maybe not even your truly that's your style or something that is great for your family's lifestyle, right? You're just comparing it to some random Pinterest picture or something, but we put so much pressure on ourselves to be that. What I'm hearing you is no, you be you for today. And whether that's making half the loop or the full loop, it's just putting in the work to do what you can do today, your capacity, and not judge it.
Yeah, I think the judgment thing is huge. It's like if you just keep doing it, we all judge ourselves. That's part of being human. That's part of the human experience. So you can hear those voices in your head, but you have to decide whether or not you're going to listen to them or which ones you're going to decide to listen to. And so I think with design, and one of the things that I've really learned over the, 20 years of my career in the design world is to get those photos that you see on Pinterest and Instagram looking like the way they do. It's not real life. You're watching a TV show. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
very intimately because I create a lot of those images. It's
Yep.
not real. That's not what my house
Yep.
really looks like. You know
Nope.
what I mean? It's like a makeup. It's,
It's
and
a
and
filter.
so it's a filter and it's fun, right? It's an art.
Yes.
And it's
Aspirational.
fun. And you
Yes.
can make your house look like that for a picture if you want. You know what I mean? But also like this, the reality of living your life is that you don't want to live in a picture. That's not what's going to make your life beautiful. That's not what's going to
Mm-hmm.
make your experience of living in your home a beautiful experience. What's going to make your experience of living in your home a beautiful experience is by creating a place where you are free to be yourself, where you're free to do the activities in your home that support your well-being, your growth, your creativity, your family connection, parties that you want to have, the experiences that you want to facilitate in your home. That's what makes a beautiful home. What makes a beautiful picture is a totally different thing. And you can learn both trades. If you want to be a
Yes.
stylist or a photographer and you want to learn how to make a beautiful picture, that's awesome. That's an art into of itself. It's like a
Yes.
painting. It's like learning how to write or learning how to do any other creative endeavor that you're going to do. And you can work at that and you can get to a place where you can create a beautiful photo. Creating a beautiful home is a whole different thing.
Absolutely. And so for you, creating that beautiful home, there's so many beautiful colors and it's just for me, it's the words that describe your style is vibrancy, welcoming, inviting, pattern on pattern. And some people, describe it as bohemian, eclectic. I don't like to use too many words like that because I don't like to box things in. How do you describe your aesthetics and style, and how do you bring in those things into your own home? Can you give us some advice on how we can bring that energy that you're so talented in into our home? Because I think it's more about the energy in your work than just pattern on pattern colors.
Thank you.
There's a very distinct energy that you bring that people
Hmm.
are attracted to. That's why your work is so widely acclaimed and popular.
Thank you so much. I really think my style is an extension of who I am as a person.
Agreed.
And so I think I'm a person who enjoys exuding warmth. I think when you meet me, I'm a hugger. I'm going to give you a hug. I'm going
Yes.
to, you're
I
going
can
to feel
attest
the
to
warmth.
that.
You're going to feel the warmth emanating from me. That is my nature. That is something that I think the spaces that I design exude. I think they exude warmth. I'm somebody who enjoys comfort. You're never going to see me in stilettos. You're never going to see me with a face full of makeup because it's not comfortable to me. You're not going to see me in a corset. Like, these are just not things that I find comfortable. So you're not going to see me like that. And the same thing goes for my house. I want my house to feel comfortable. I want my house to feel full of life. That's something that I also believe that is in my nature. I try and exude this feeling of liveliness, a feeling, you called it vibrancy. I might call it, yeah, vibrant or full of life, or exuding with lots of energy. I think that's something that I try and transmit to people. Positive energy radiating. That's, why I use the sun face as my
Hmm.
logo. Just this idea of like radiating warmth and positivity. And so that's really what I try to bring to my design. I appreciate your care in not, boxing in, not just me, but just everyone in general, because I really strongly dislike that feeling of being boxed in. I think it, first of all, prohibits personal growth and development, whether it's an aesthetic, development or otherwise. But also, I think that we're here to grow, and so if that means changing and transforming and evolving, that's part of it. So I think for me, I look back on photos, from 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I'm like, yeah, of course my style has evolved and changed. I'm an evolving, changing human being, and I want room and space to do that. But I think the through line, ever since I was a very small child, is that I like to tell stories through my work. And sometimes they're very specific stories of people I've loved and places I've been, conversations I've had, juxtapositions that make me stop and think or smile. Sometimes they're more elaborate stories, like, oh, this is inspired by a specific trip, and this room is like kind of an ode to that, or a biome or a feeling that I want to have, or it's like a temperature. For me, designing spaces is really about transporting someone into, and mostly it's me, right? Where do I want to be? Where do I want to feel like I am in this moment? Again, like temperature, I think is a big part of how I think about design. Do I want this to cool me down? Do I want it to be warm? Do I want to, feel flexible in here? Do I want, like, how do I want the space to support how I want to feel?
For you, Justina, in your own home, is there a special spot or a special activity that makes you feel like the true Justina? Like it's just like your all time favorite space or home activity that you just go back to for respite and rejuvenation?
I think it's so many different places at so many different times for many different Justinas. We contain multitudes. There are definitely moments where it's water that brings me solace, and I'm a water girl and I want to be in the water. So I want to be in our big ass bathtub, or I want to go out to the pool, or I want to
Mm-hmm.
be in the shower. And that's where I feel the most me in that moment. But then there's definitely other moments where I'm like, no, I'm a fire girl. I'm an Aries. I want to be laying in front of the fireplace and reading a
Are you
book. And
really an Aries?
hmm yeah,
Oh, I am too. When's your birthday? Well, I don't know
March
if you want to share.
23rd.
Oh my gosh. I'm April 5th. We are birthday buddies. No
Everybody's,
wonder we're attracted to
I
each
know,
other.
Aries always love Aries.
Fire sign. We are
We love,
spicy.
we are spicy and we like to talk.
Oh my God. Why do you think I started this podcast?
Right, right. No, for sure. I a little bit reject the like premise of a favorite thing just because I feel like my favorite things are always changing
Changing.
and I think that's one of the fun things about design is that you can kind of constantly be tweaking things to evolve with how you're evolving and even whether it's just a mood switch or whatever. So I think my favorite area in the home is just like I'm like, oh, today like my home studio where I'm sitting right now is my favorite because I'm painting and this place supports me painting, and so this is my favorite place. And maybe the next day it'll be my bedroom because I want to hang out with my husband and we're having fun and we want to kick it and relax and do what we want to do, so it's in there, so whatever the different energies of the moment are.
I really appreciate that. And I think it encourages myself and listeners to kind of have a new lens at home because we do tend to box ourselves in like, oh, the formal living room should only be for X, Y, and Z, or the kitchen, like we even let the builder decide our living, right? Because they space planned certain areas to be this or that. I know for me, I try to challenge that with clients who don't use the formal living room or the formal dining room. Let's put a pool table in. You have 3 teenagers. Let's just make it into a game room. Who cares? So what you're saying, I really appreciate because it's like, why are we boxing ourselves in our own home? Like, forget that.
Yeah, it's actually really like very surprising to me the way that so much of I think the way people think about design is about pleasing others. Whether it's worrying about resale value, what are people going to think when they come to my house, and I want to be on trend or I want to be this or that. And for me, it's really like, wow, like if there's one place in the world you should be leaning into your own inclinations, your own taste, your own activities that you like to do, it's your home, and so that's like the one place that you should really be making for you, and your family. And so I think like I really like to encourage people to just get more free. Like this is your place. This is your place. If you want to run around naked, this is the one place that you're allowed to do that. Like do it. Run around
Absolutely.
naked, whatever you want to do. So I think that there's so many ways that design can support you even understanding more about yourself. I think a lot of people don't know what they like. And I think,
100%.
and
Yep.
so they're just grabbing onto whatever, the magazines say are cool,
Trends.
or the TV shows say are cool, or their favorite celebrity says are cool. And they're like, oh, that's what's cool. Maybe it's different arenas. I think for a lot of people, food is very visceral. You
Mhm.
can taste something and you should be able to know. I think that's a very accessible thing for people. Like, if you like to eat something or not, right?
Mhm.
And if you can sort of practice understanding that side of things from an aesthetic standpoint, like the same way that you might eat an apple and be like, this apple is like crunchy, sweet, it's a little tangy, like I really like that. You can do the same thing with home decor where you're like, oh, this color, yeah, when I look at it, it reminds me of being in the ocean. And I really like being in the ocean. I'm going to try bringing that color into my home and just really sort of starting to understand what you like and what you vibe with. And bringing that into your home because it's the one place where you get to express yourself fully. You get to really stand in who you want to be without compromise. We're outside of our homes. We have to make so many compromises, and so inside your home, hopefully you feel permission. You feel free to really stand in who you are and express that.
I think the universe knew that I needed to hear that today. And the universe was like, Justina's going to give you a very, very, very specific message. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And I think it will help listeners gain that confidence to be who we truly are, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all about just expressing our humanness, right? Our humanity. Um, One thing that I do want to ask, and I know your time is very precious, so we'll end with this. What is your prescription or suggestion to giving ourselves that permission? Because it's easy to say, but when we're so trained and entrenched in certain thought loops that no, I can't do
Mhm.
that, or no, that's a design rule, or I'm just really not good at styling pillows, you know. Is there a foray? Is there a first easy step? Is it through textiles? Is it through paint colors? Like, what's your suggestion for someone who wants to break free at home using design?
What is really helpful is to start really bite sized. I think that's true with everything in life. I think when you start with like, oh, I have my whole house to do, even like, oh, I have to, do my living room or my dining, like even that can feel very, very overwhelming. I think starting really, really small, you can pick like a corner or a wall, or you're like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on this sofa. And I want to make this sofa be a true expression of who I am. And what does that look like for me? And so start with a really, really small project. Maybe it's a tablescape for like a dinner that you're doing. You have to get to know yourself before you jump into this, right? If you are one of
Mm-hmm.
those people who are just like, I don't really know what my style is, and I get that, right? Like maybe it's not as clean and clear for you as eating an apple and knowing you like it. And you're kind of wavering. You're trying to figure out what that means to you and for you. Yeah, start with something small. Start with a tablescape and say, you know what? I'm going to work on this one tablescape until I feel like it really resonates. Like, and one other thing I like to do is to think about places that you've been. I think this is really different from like looking on Pinterest or on Instagram for inspiration. I mean that's great too, and that can be helpful, but really, if you can kind of do sort of a meditative exercise or a journal entry or something along those lines of the places that you've been that have visually really like stayed with you, really impacted you. When I was 20, I went on a spring break trip to Morocco and I was there for 2 weeks. Morocco
Mm-hmm.
stayed with me from an
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic standpoint. I was
I
just
can
like,
see that.
wow, there was so much about the aesthetic in Morocco, and I was really top ramening it back then. It wasn't like I was staying in really fancy places or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but there was just something about the colors, something about the tiles and the parks and just everything that just like the marketplaces, the colors, the vibrancy, all of it that just really spoke to my soul. And I just like held on to that. And so when I close my eyes and think back to places that have really influenced me, that trip, and I've been to Morocco several times since then, but that first trip of going there, I can close my eyes and it's like I can smell it, I can see it, I can, taste it. It's like so vivid for me. So think about the places that might have had that kind of impact on you. Maybe it was your grandmother's house growing up. Maybe it was a cool hotel that you stayed at in Tulum. Maybe it's like your grocery store around the corner where there's all this like cool stuff, or they've got a beautiful window where the light shines just so, whatever it is, just start there. Start with something that viscerally you're like, oh yeah, that was like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Maybe it's a straight nature place. Maybe it's a creek or the snow, and once you start to really hone in on that, and it's not even about like you should feel it in your body, right? Like, oh,
100%.
and so you're not really going to get that from looking at a picture on a screen. It's about the
Yeah.
experience that you have with it in
Experience.
person. Hold on to that experience, and then you can kind of use that as a jumping off place for yourself. Like, oh yeah, well, when I went to the snow, I never felt more peaceful than that. Well, it's like, okay, well, maybe when you do your tablescape or your sofa, start with that palette. Start with the palette that reminds you of the snow and see what happens. See how you feel.
I enjoy that piece of advice so much. Just again, the whole holistic, right, experience of design. And when you're up against so many decisions or options that you see just through Pinterest or Instagram, that only confuses us more. But going back to ourselves, like you mentioned, and our own human experiences in a location or, like you said, a core memory with grandma, or, it could be anything, but bringing that memory or energy into your new space can be truly transformational. The biggest takeaway from you is just the inner beauty that we can explore more within ourselves. I know for you, it started from a very young age. It sounds like from your mom, she really brought it internally and helped you connect the external with the internal. And Justina, I'm sure with therapy, that's our whole work with people, right? Is the mind body connection. And what a beautiful thing you have. And I know 100% that's why I'm attracted to your energy, is that inner beauty, that inner confidence in your work that makes me go, "Oh, my brain reacts to that." I'm like, "That is fascinating. That face she just made, or that sun, or the patterns and the colors, like it exudes." So, I want to thank you again for being you.
Hmm,
And thank you so much for spending time with me and the listeners today. We enjoy you so much. I know I can speak for everyone on that. So thank you for bringing this amazing energy to all of us.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's been fun to talk to you. I believe that design can really increase the quality of life, and design and art and beauty, it's just one of the things that makes being here so incredibly beautiful, but it has to be the real kind.
100%. And when we say the real kind, it doesn't mean perfect kind. And that's something that I'm really gaining more and more insight lately on. And especially my conversation with you today is, oh man, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just do it, right?
It's not perfect, and it's never going to be
It's
perfect.
never going to be perfect. Exactly. Exactly.
That's the part. That's the funny trick. Everyone's like, "It's okay if it's not perfect." Well, it's like, well, yeah, it's okay because
It's
that's
never
what
going to.
it is.
Before we leave, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we mentioned this because we have to talk about your hair. I am obsessed with your hair, and I know everybody's probably going to be curious, but do you have a hair ritual or routine? Because I am always envious of people with volume, and like because I have straight flat hair, and I just love your hair. Like it's so pretty. And I'm just curious, do you have like a hair? I know this is really off subject, but I want to know, do you have a hair routine?
Girl, I'm so low maintenance with everything. I'm like, what I do is shampoo my hair about twice a week. And then sometimes I'll leave some conditioner in it, but my hair is just what it is. For better
Oh,
and for
well,
worse, it's just voluminous. I mean, my
oh, I
whole
love
self is
it.
kind of voluminous. It's just my how God made me. So
But well, keep
perfectly
on because
imperfect.
no, it's just so beautiful. And so I was like last night, I'm like, and don't forget to ask her about her hair care because that's just amazing.
It's just the way Mama Nature made me. But thank you. And you
Well,
know
I
what? I
love it.
also reject the flat straight hair isn't beautiful. It is.
No volume. It's too flat here. I
Why
just
does
wish
it
I
have
had.
to have volume, girl? Why does it
I
have
don't
to have
know.
volume?
It's true.
It
I
can
don't
be
know.
sleek. You know what I mean? I'm just
It
saying
is sleek.
everyone can work what they got in design, in yourself. Like you got volume, great, work your volume. You got flat, work your sleek flat.
Just saying, okay, I got it. I got it. Got the memo. I'm going to work on that.
Okay, girl. Okay. We all work what we got. Yes.
Well, of being with you. It's like the universe knows I need doses of Justina.
All right, my dear. Well, thank you so much
Okay.
for today. This has been a lot of
Thank
fun.
you too. And I hope we can catch up soon. Wishing you a wonderful week.